Today we've come to Troywood in Fife. It's a really beautiful place, but what we're really interested in is below my feet.
This particular bunker that we stand in today formed part of a much bigger, highly secretive, top priority subterranean network of defense bunkers that were planned and built at the very advent of the Cold War.
During the Cold War, the threat was real. This wasn't imaginary.
At that time, Russia and America were very much superpowers, very much against each other. To a certain extent, we were sort of stuck in the middle, and as a result of that, there was some concern that potentially war could break out.
You know, from a Western point of view, it was important to meet the Soviet challenge. They'd, got control of all of Eastern Europe, and they weren't going to give it up.
No one wanted a war. I mean, we used to get a lot of hassle from CND, and yet no one was more anti-war than we were. We were doing a job that we hoped to God, and thankfully we never needed to do for real.
During the Second World War, Russia, America and the UK were all part of the Allies that fought against the Axis powers. The relationship helped win the war, but it wasn't an easy one. America's concerns about Soviet communism led to tensions between the East and the West, with Scotland right in the middle.
Scotland is very important to the Cold War, both in terms of the sort of logistical and diplomatic and sort of military support in terms of the monitoring of Soviet naval movements and and air movements, and as a strategic site for the refueling of US nuclear submarines in Holy Loch, and also as a political battleground for ideas, both for pro- and anti-nuclear campaigners, right up to the present day.
With the rise of nuclear technology and weapons, for more than 40 years, the world was on the edge of disaster. This period became known as the Cold War.
In 1949, the first Soviet tests of their own atomic bombs. And what does the entire Western world do? They panic.
I regarded it as a challenge, something that we in the West would be well to counter, to look as if we were going to deal with it in an effective way, whether politically or diplomatically or militarily.
As there's this increased fear of nuclear attack and the drive towards investment in civil defense, and particularly with Britain being as close as it is to the, comparatively speaking, to the Soviet Union.
Scotland was nestled in between America and Russia, making it strategically very important.
Well, Scotland was strategically well placed. Russian submarines heading down to patrol off the coast of America, which is what they were doing. Submarines based from Faslane had a relatively easy access to that area. Scotland was closer to Russia in terms of missile flight.
We have the perfect vantage point looking eastward towards not only the Soviet Union, but the other countries that were pulled in to form the Warsaw-pact bloc of countries by 1955.
Building a Faslane base gave us easy access to the material support you could have.
Arguably, in some ways, Scotland was better suited to the purposes of communication and radar interception because, interestingly enough, of the very geological composite of the ground, which is highly electromagnetic, which was advantageous for the purposes of communication and I think for the purposes of radar operations too.
Scotland also had the advantage of tactically important military bases that had been established during the Second World War, like Holy Loch on the Firth of Clyde, which served as a base for American submarines for the duration of the Cold War.
We attached, obviously, a lot of importance to it. If we hadn't, we wouldn't have been there.
And it wasn't just the Americans who could be found in the waters off the west coast of Scotland.
The Soviet Union kept a spy trawler somewhere between Mullakintyre and Northern Ireland, And its role really was to, I think, listen to all our communications. We were doing the same to them, I'd like to think with greater success.
While submarines patrolled our shores, the skies above Scotland were also prepared for infiltration from the east.
Behind me here is the English Electric Lightning, which was the RAF's main interceptor aircraft of the 1960s. So this is the kind of aircraft that would have defended Britain from a Russian nuclear attack. It was designed to take off at ultra-high speed and get up and intercept the Russian bombers as quickly as possible before they entered British airspace. So it had a top speed of twice the speed of sound, but its main thing was just the huge acceleration. It had so much power, it could actually, once it took off, it could fly vertically like a rocket.
All over Scotland, a group named the Royal Observation Corps Association would keep watch, looking out for potential attacks. These volunteers operated from small secret underground bunkers all over the country.
And the purpose would be, in the event of a nuclear attack, we would report basic information.
But wasn't it incredibly dangerous going out just after a nuclear bomb had gone off?
They estimated that in the event of a nuclear attack, we had probably about 20 to 25 minutes before the fallout, which had gone up, as most people would remember, like in a mushroom cloud, before the fallout started to deposit back on the ground again. So there was a small time period that you could get out and get back down again without being excessively exposed to the effects of radiation.
But after that, you were down here for the next 3 weeks?
We could potentially, if the conditions above ground stopped our relief team from getting up here.
The thought of actually having to leave my family and go and serve in a post during a crisis and not know what was going to happen to them, it was a worrying time, but thankfully, at the end of the day, we weren't needed. And that's the way we'd like it to be.
In the event of a nuclear war, it was thought that London would fall. A plan was put into place to scatter key government and military personnel to different areas around the UK, including here in St Andrews.
The people that would have been in here would have largely been key administrators. We're talking civil servants, a certain militia element, scientific advisors, but largely the people who are destined to supposedly re-emerge some years later and quite literally start again.
When it was chaos outside, this bunker would be key in planning the UK's response. A nuclear command centre. The Cold War thawed in the 1990s when the Soviet Union disbanded.
You know, if anyone had asked me, you know, is this going to go on like this? I would have said, yeah, I think it is going to go on. And the reason I thought it was going to go on was I saw absolutely no reason why the Russians would want to leave East Germany. They were in control of Poland, of Hungary, Czechoslovakia. You know, why would they give up on this thing? And I have to say that it's still a mystery to me. You know, I think it's one of the great mysteries of the 20th century.
The Cold War stretched from the end of the Second World War in 1945 to the fall of the Berlin Wall in November 1989. For 4 decades, tensions ran high, and although it never escalated into full-blown conflict between America and the USSR, there were some very close calls. The secret work carried out by these brave men and women played a vital part in Scotland's Cold War.
I feel, how shall I say, historically justified by what has happened. I think it's been a good thing for the world that is over. I'm glad we don't have that kind of a Cold War anymore. There's still a sort of a coldness at times, but I don't think it's got the same degree of threat that it had in those days, and I'm grateful for that, I think. Hope it continues.